Hello and welcome to today's APBP webinar. My name is Kit Keller. I'm Executive Director of the Association of Pedestrian and Bicycle Professionals, and I'm delighted that you've joined us today for a very interesting webinar. I want to let you know if you have any technical difficulties, there is a number that you can call, 1-800-263-6317, and the prompts will lead you to the assistance that you need. But hopefully everything will work out well, and we won't need that at all. The topic today is how rapid transformation delivers bike-friendly urban streets. We have three excellent presenters, and we will meet them in just a moment. This webinar is free today, thanks to the good folks at PeopleForBikes and the Green Lane Project. And we have been collaborating, APBP and PeopleForBikes, on a series of protected bike lane webinars. So we hope that you'll take the time to view those that are in the archives and the ones coming up as well. Many of you may be looking for continuing education. We hope that's the case. And if it is, this is how you will get your credit. Do log in your attendance on your site host's sign-in sheet if you happen to be watching in a group, which again, we hope that you are joining with colleagues to watch today's webinar. And then the site hosts, if you'll send us that completed sign-in sheet afterwards, that would be great. You can email it or fax it, either one. You may also download a certificate of attendance, and there's a link there. And then planners, just a heads up that this has been approved for continuing maintenance credits at 1.0. It is my duty and privilege to invite you to attend APBP's Professional Development Seminar coming up about just less than 2 months from today in St. Louis, a great city, very representative of what many cities are facing. They have made great strides and they're eager to share with you what they've done. So please visit us at apbppds.org and learn more about the webinar. And please come if you can. It promises to be excellent. So let's move into the presenters for today and get to know them a bit. Dong-Ho Chang is a PE and PTOE city traffic engineer for the city of Seattle. John Orcutt is transportation policy consultant, PeopleForBikes, and Kristen Saunders is the bicycle and pedestrian coordinator for the city of Pittsburgh. So now I will share with you their bios, but I won't read all of them. Of course, the most fascinating thing about Dong-Ho is that he drove a Zamboni during high school, and I have to say he might be the only person I know who ever did that, and he thinks that's his coolest job ever. He has worked in other cities in Washington and also for the Washington State DOT. John Orcutt is a gentleman that I've had the privilege of working with in the past on the APBP 2009 Professional Development Seminar when it was part of Walk 21, and John was at the New York City DOT. He has acted as the City Director of Policy at the New York City DOT and has been very active in bike share systems and Vision Zero. And since he's left government, he is now consulting, and many of you may know that John was also the Executive Director of Transportation Alternatives in New York, and quite an admired group that is. And then Kristen Saunders, many of you had a chance to visit Pittsburgh in 2014 for the Pro Walk, Pro Bike, Pro Place conference. And Kristen brings a background in architecture, so this is very interesting. She'll share with you what's happening in Pittsburgh. And I want to highlight that she was once involved with the Rebar Art and Design Group in San Francisco. Heroes of mine, certainly, and hopefully yours as well, for their work on Parking Day and later parklets. So without further ado, I'm going to transfer the controls over to Deborah Gakes, actually, who will be showing John Orcutt's slides, and he will be walking and talking us through them. So Deb, you will see the slide controls. We see your slides, and John, it's all yours.
Kit, thank you so much for hosting us today and for that very kind introduction. And thanks to everybody in the audience around the country and the world for joining us. It sounds like it's a great turnout, and we really appreciate your participation. We're talking today about the practice and the proliferation and institutionalization of techniques that are reshaping the function and the geometry of streets across American cities. So this initial presentation is this sort of super light speed overview of some research that I've been doing for PeopleForBikes and for their Green Lane project. And we've taken a look at, certainly not the whole universe of this practice because it's spreading so quickly, but at 7 cities that represent a really diverse and interesting set of examples. So they are San Francisco, New York City, Austin, Texas, Seattle, Memphis, Chicago, and Pittsburgh. And we'll get into some of the details of the programs with our great presenters today from Seattle and Pittsburgh. But I'll just go through a very quick overview. Next slide, please. One of the interesting things in looking at this phenomenon of using techniques, paint and objects that are easily moved and easily installed, is that it's so new that we don't really have a clear name for it yet. And that's kind of one of our challenges in this research. And some people call it rapid implementation. The New York City DOT, where I used to work, called them operational projects to distinguish them from capital projects. Some of the writing about the public space aspects of it has referred to it as tactical urbanism, which is, it's a catchy name. I think it misses some of the strategic significance of what cities are doing with these techniques, though. NACDO's Urban Streets book calls them interim design strategies, which kind of implies that somehow these are going to get built out in more robust ways after the paint and object stage. I've been sort of using the phrase real-time transportation projects as I've been writing up some of the research. But we haven't really had the conversation and decided what we want to call this so far. And, you know, overnight or, you know, whatever time frame, quick time frame you want to use. There's a lot of discussion about what to call this, and we'd love to get some more input from you folks who are in different jurisdictions working on these ideas or thinking about them, to think about what we should call this, because it's good to name it, and it can only help it spread and improve it as we go. Next slide, please. One of the interesting things about a lot of this is that it did grow out of many cities' desire to make bicycles sort of a real and viable and widespread form of transportation. And I think that's kind of natural. In a lot of places, their bike programs were basically a piece of the markings program because bike lanes tended to be just indicated in paint. But as demand and I think some official realization that cyclists in cities need a little bit more than just a paint stripe came along, these programs started to evolve from simply markings to what can we do to make this more robust and make people feel more comfortable and protected on the street. And then once that happened, there were cities that said, well, we can actually be doing even more with these kind of techniques. It's not just about cycling. And I think what's also interesting that we're finding is, yes, there have been mayors who've come in, Rahm Emanuel, and said, we're going to make this a bike-friendly city. Current leadership in Seattle. There are many examples of this, but there are other ways that these things got started and acquired tremendous momentum in other cities. In some cases, a mayor may have said, yeah, we're interested in this, but without really realizing or driving it personally, and you get an ambitious transportation leadership, as we had in New York in the Bloomberg administration, who sort of took hold of some goals and some openings and then showed real success with a few early projects that then convinced the mayor and the city hall leadership that this was a winner, and not just politically, but from an objective point of view, the bike ridership numbers going up, crash numbers coming down, more people demanding these things. And even in cities without strong mayors like Austin, public demand for these things led transportation leaders to say, look, we should be trying some of these things. And I also now think the phenomenon of horizontal communication and adoption is playing a big role, and certainly this webinar is an example of that. And the work over the last few years of the Green Lane project and the uptake of the NACDO design guides, all of these things are starting to play a role in making these things more widespread and more part of the standard practice now in American cities. Next slide, please. And as I said,
John, excuse me for a moment. John, may I ask you to speak up a bit? We've had a couple of requests that you speak up.
Sure. And in this phenomenon of thinking beyond the bike programs and what you can do, public space is one of the clear other areas of implementation. Certainly, the idea of repurposing street space that takes up, most of the space between buildings in a city has really caught on in terms of public plazas, parklets programs, pavement to parks, those kinds of things. But I would say right now the fastest growing sort of non-cycling area that we're seeing these kind of rapid implementation projects, these real-time transportation projects going in, is in the area of traffic calming and safety, and especially as more and more cities embrace the Vision Zero philosophy, they're looking for ways to quickly drive down crash numbers and injury and fatality numbers. And so we're really starting to see intersection geometries being addressed, either high crash locations or sort of a high crash profile, those things being redesigned with the kind of techniques we're seeing in these, real-time overnight transportation projects. Next, please. Where these things live it's very pragmatic. I mean, no two city governments are exactly the same. And what's great about these techniques is that they're nimble and adaptable enough that they can fit into a bunch of different institutional settings. In the bigger cities with city transportation departments, generally seeing these things evolve from, say, a small bike staff or a unit that's been created to develop a bicycle network into a little bit broader set of units, some maybe a public space or a plaza unit, sort of a people streets or a streetscape unit that's doing pedestrian or safety related things. And these are evolving into specialized units that generally live within the traffic division. It makes sense to be in there with the signal signs and markings people and to start, sort of building these functions into those regular programs. In some cases where like a public space unit is new, it might be under the commissioner's office for some time, but then we've seen them sort of integrated and merged back into the traffic operations as this kind of approach becomes just regular part of traffic operations in the cities that we're looking at. In some cases, you have a little bit more of a multipolar situation where you may have a planning department alongside a public works department, and then you see some interesting stuff happening, like project managers from planning working with the people who manage, say, a resurfacing program. Austin, Texas, and Chicago, for example, have made a lot of ground just piggybacking onto resurfacing schedules and remarking the streets differently once the paving crews have come in and done their work. You're going to remark it no matter what. The question is, if you can put a little resources in up front to create a new marking scheme, you can come up with a very different feeling street for very low cost and in a very short period of time. So we're seeing those kinds of things. In some cases, you have almost working groups or coalitions of agencies where maybe the public works is in the room. If the program is really nascent and getting off the ground, you may have the mayor's office or so, some kind of policy unit from the mayor's office, working on the ideas and the messaging, and then the people who actually do the implementation, whether it's traffic ops or the people at the Department of Public Works who do these things. In some cities even have a DOT and a Public Works Department with a variety of functions, and they get together and collaborate. And a lot of it is just scheduling and figuring out how to work these things into the routines that have existed for quite a while. One of the things that's interesting that we have found as well is that many of these cities have either an in-house or an on-call contractor to do quick concrete work. It's not concrete work that moves curbs and affects drainage and gets down below the street, but it's able to add a little bit more physicality to some of these projects within the kind of time frames that we're still talking about doing a project, from start to finish on the street within weeks. But those in-house concrete units can really add some dimensions in terms of a little bit of curb protection, a pedestrian safety island, just, some quick geometry changes where that's possible. Next slide, please. And, where these projects are coming from, some of these things are now advanced enough that there's a regular rhythm to them. You can see that in New York, Chicago, San Francisco, a few other examples, there's a regular annual program. These things happen quickly enough that you can basically go from conception to finished project on the street within 12 months. So you often have people in these units within traffic ops or planning or wherever they are, creating the project, say, in the late fall and over the winter, and then shifting into project management mode to work with the implementers in the spring and summer, and then going back into that rhythm. And it's good because other stakeholders and constituencies in these cities are now perceiving the rhythm. So you'll have like aldermen or city council members or whoever your local elected officials are starting to say, oh, we need some of this in our district, and I have some discretionary money in the budget. So you're starting to see, some synergy as other players start to perceive this rhythm and understand that you can actually get something fairly quickly in your streetscape, in your district, because of the accessibility of these programs and the fact that you can go to realization so quickly. The variety of sources that project developers have relied on over time. Some cities have come up with their own design guidelines in the absence of anything else. But then after, say, 2010, 2011, as the NACTO book started to come out, more and more cities have gone to look at those things. They don't talk so much about these techniques, which, I think are largely still kind of held as knowledge in-house, and how to do the paint, how to do quick concrete work and meld it all together. But the geometries are coming from now the NACTO books and from some of these earlier guidance that cities were developing on their own. Next slide, please. When you talk about bike and ped, projects in the U.S., you often sort of get into this litany of the federal categories that we're all pretty well aware of. There's transportation alternatives, and before that it was transportation enhancements. And some places were able to make use of CMAQ funding and a variety of other of the flexibilities built into the federal program. But when you get on the ground and you see places that are really doing these annual programs with anywhere from half a dozen to 50 projects a year, you see a real variety there, and a lot of it is exploiting available local funding that's a lot easier to use than the usual federal categories that a lot of bike ped discussion centers on. So in some cases, it's simply, if you're in the traffic operations area, you can just start drawing budget, from your basic budget lines, like marking some signals and putting some of those resources into signaling and marking streets differently. And so that's just whatever you're using there in terms of local, state, maybe some federal, some general federal categories to do those things. You just sort of repurposing some of that funding. In other cases, there are monies that are becoming available as these programs or are defined or are addressed by leadership. In New York, there was a sustainability category that came along with Mayor Bloomberg's first push on those things in 2007, and that really helped boost the some of the cycling and public space projects. Voters in San Francisco recently added a bunch of money for safety, so that some of the quick action Vision Zero projects are finding more resources, and so the number of projects per year is actually increasing. There are funds in Texas, for example, that don't exist in other places. Washington State, I believe, as well. So there's it's like the rest of the aspects of these programs. It's very pragmatic, and there are some very heroic people doing very creative things and finding interesting sets of funds that they're able to apply. And in transportation terms, these things don't cost huge amounts, and so the repurposing and kind of finding that money that can go in the cracks, can be really helpful. I will say, in some cases, cities have been able to harness big pieces of the federal program, especially CMAQ, which is a fairly large program, into ongoing bike network programs. So there is, there is some of that money flowing in on a regular basis, and it's cities that have sort of hashed this issue out over time with their states, so that there's an actual network fund. It's not like project by project, and so you're able to get a much better sort of pipeline of federal money coming in than when you're sort of going project by project and getting all the levels of design review that can entail. But New York and Chicago are two cities that have been able to sort that out. Next slide, please. We mentioned in NACTO calling these interim design strategies, and the implication there that these projects will be built out in more robust materials over time. This is a shot from New York. Queens Boulevard is currently in the middle stage here. Right now, as we speak, new painted protected bike lanes are going in on Queens Boulevard, which in New York is kind of a big deal given the street's history. But you can see that the city is anticipating a capital project coming in within fairly short order to build out those protected bike lanes and additional pedestrian space as a construction project. This is very atypical, actually, not just in New York, but around the universe of these projects. There are places where this is happening and where the paint and object stage is seen as a phase one that is going to really have a follow-up, and that's known. But I think in most cases, it's not given, and the cities have not really sorted out, a clear timetable or even a clear sense of whether they want to do that, or whether a lot of the bike network will be sort of kept in these operational materials and just refreshed as needed or as possible. There is no lockstep, and there are so many projects being built. It would be probably hard fiscally for the capital pipeline at this point to catch up and accommodate these absent some of their major funding steps. So this issue is a little bit all over the map. There are places where there are kind of hybrid projects being done. In San Francisco, the operational projects are also considered capital projects. So there's more of a spectrum and a set of different design templates that they use, but it's mostly a case of circumstantially they think they need a more robust project in certain settings and a more paint and objects project in other types of settings. But there is no schedule for making the paint into concrete, for example. So this is still, still something that's going to evolve and be resolved in different ways going forward. Next slide, please. And this is just one example in New York where there was a capital project coming behind the painted project on Allen Street in the Lower East Side, and you can see the median side bike lane. On some blocks, it's still paint and cross hatching. In some blocks, it's a beautiful landscaped bikeway, and that will succeed over time. But again, this is the exception rather than the rule that we're seeing so far. And I think some places are trying to go fast and get real networks and real safety results down on the ground without worrying about how you build all this stuff out over time so far. So I think we're still in a very pragmatic and early stage in considering these things as city infrastructure and what their longevity might be. Next slide. And that gets us to one of the issues that we have seen in doing the research. In some of the bigger cities that have been doing this for a while, there's a concern internally, and it's starting to be reflected externally in complaints about worn away markings and the fact that we now have dramatically expanded sort of acreage or square footage or however you want to express it, areas of installed paint on the streets in some very vast cities with gigantic street networks. And how you can maintain that is an ongoing concern and question. New York City DOT in its first Vision Zero budget request to City Hall, which added some funding for different things, included the refreshing of street markings as an important piece of their request. This is definitely a concern in Chicago as well. Other issues, and I'll let our city-specific speakers take over in just a second. Speed of implementation. People who love the types of projects think it's great. People who are leery of bike lanes or don't like to see, streets narrowed, or a lot of people tend to not worry about whether you've created this tremendous revolution in the speed of implementation, but they're still just really focused on the substance of the project. So it tends to influence their their point of view on such projects more so than the fact that instead of taking 6 or 10 years, you're taking 6 or 10 months. But in some cities where where changing the streets has become a big point of pride, and Memphis is one that comes to mind, people are very excited about the fact that the city is out there getting things done and engaging, a lot of community effort in thinking about the streets and actually in launching some of these projects. Many of these cities find that when you say, look, we can always change these things back because they're just in paint, that we can move the rocks back, we can scrape up the graveled asphalt. That only works a few times. Once you've got 10 or 20 projects in the ground, people say, well, we get what the program is here. And there are places where you get some pushback just because people don't all want Dayglow green paint and plastic sticks all over the place. And that does sort of lead to this issue of whether you can follow some of these projects, especially where those concerns exist, with more robust infrastructure and a real capital project as a follow-on. And I think, incidentally, just from my travels, that's part of the resistance we see in Europe to some of these approaches, is that they don't want to take their cities from the Baroque era with all kinds of beautiful stone workings and start slapping paint down all over it. Although there are places where I've seen this done in a very subtle way, in parts of London, for example. I will turn it over now to our other guests. And again, thank you so much for participating and for being part of this project. And we look forward to your input.
Oh, thank you so much, John. What an excellent presentation. Before we move to Dong Ho next, I'd like to go ahead and launch a poll and find out how many people are watching the webinar today with you at your site. This really helps us provide feedback to our sponsor, PeopleForBikes Green Lane Project, to let them know that their investment was really worthwhile. So I hope that you'll take just a moment to finish the poll. And as soon as we get to about 80% here, I'll go ahead and close it, and we're almost there. So just a couple more votes and we're good to go. So let me share I'll close it and share the results with you. So many of you are watching alone and others are watching together with colleagues. So bravo for that. I will now close this poll and pass the controls over to Dong Ho. So you will see a note that you've been made the presenter. Dong Ho, welcome.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. So thank you, everyone. My name is Dong Ho Cheng. I'm the City Traffic Engineer for City of Seattle, and I'll be talking to you a little bit about Seattle's experience with rapid implementation and also just safety in general. So SDOT's mission, that changed there for you. Okay, did the screen change?
Yes, we can see your slides.
Okay,
You're all
so
set.
that mission is to deliver high-quality transportation system for Seattle, and our vision is to connected people, places, and products. We have 5 committed core values to create a city that's safe, interconnected, affordable, vibrant, and innovative for all. So Seattle is kind of a unique city. We are experiencing tremendous growth. We had in the last 10 years an increased population of 11%. While that we were seeing the growth, traffic arms are actually down. So we have a decrease in that 10-year period of 10% compared to 1.4% for all state roads in the state. And we are able to accommodate that growth because people are using transit. We have a transit ridership increased by 40% in a 10-year period.
Excuse me, Dong Ho, if you're moving your slides forward, people are not seeing those.
Yeah, I'm trying to see.
So you can use your arrow keys, or you can also use your the very small to the bottom left. Oh, perfect.
There we go. Okay, so
Thanks, that's up.
Because we're seeing the tremendous growth, we can accommodate that growth in many different ways. Our streets, our street right of way in the city, comprise of 20% of the land in the city. So it's a pretty significant portion of the city. And as we continue to grow, taking the right of way to widen for transportation is really not feasible and not the most prudent decision. So this is 200 people traveling on our 4th Avenue downtown with 177 cars, 3 buses, 1 light rail train, or on their bike, and maybe a combination of all of those to accommodate everyone's needs. And so really, we have to be creative about how we accommodate all these modes in a confined space. Here's an example on Dexter Avenue where we have prioritized the bus travel on the corridor and provided a pathway for bikes as well. And really thinking about flexible use of the right-of-way. This is Bell Street, 4 blocks in downtown where, we do need the capacity during the day, but during the off-peak and weekends, you can repurpose it and use it in a different way as the community grows and they need space to gather and to really enjoy the amenities. You can close a block or 2 blocks to create a different place and have a right-of-way that really is flexible. Seattle adopted the Vision Zero in February, and it's really our plan to eliminate serious fatalities and injuries by 2030. And we do that by street design that prioritizes safety, engage our public with education, and target enforcement for changing behavior. And what's going on in Seattle? Well, we are seeing a very safe city, one of the safest city in the nation for walking and biking, second safest city for that. And our collisions are actually decreasing, collision rates are decreasing. But if you look at the serious injuries and fatalities, the disproportionate portion of that is really borne by people who are walking and biking or riding on a motorcycle. So collisions involving people who are walking, biking, or riding a motorcycle represent 5% of the total collisions in Seattle, but that 5% represents 50% of the fatalities. So it really tells us where we need to look at our data and then make a difference in driving that down to zero. So why protect the bike lanes? Well, because risk of injury really drops significantly, 90% by putting in these facilities. And it encourages ridership, especially with people who are, they want to ride, but they are wary of riding in very heavy traffic. Again, it creates a level of predictability for everyone when you have a nice facility that's continuous and easy to use. And we were told, as we were doing our bicycle master plan update, where a reasonably polite Seattleites couple folks came in the dark of the night and gave us a very strong lesson in what we need to consider as we put in our facility. So this is on Cherry Street where they put some flexible posts in under the state interstate and told us that very minimal cost and investment, you can actually make a significant difference. And so we took that to heart and worked with our state DOT to create a design that we can test out. That same flex post that you're seeing on there is actually in place currently, so it's been very robust, has worked out really well. And we took that opportunity to even think a little bit further about now that how do we take people who are on this facility and take them to a safe place. So we created a 2-stage left turn box at the interstate on-ramp, created a bike lane that comes into a protected bike lane on the next block over, just to see what a protected bike facility might look like. We have a bicycle master plan that was updated in 2014 that really took community's voice into our plan and protected bike lanes, residential streets that are really calm and low speed and low volume. Those are the facilities that the community asked us to put in. And our 5-year implementation plan is doing that, exactly that, building those facilities. The funding for most of our bike facility is currently funded by local Bridging the Gap levy funding, and our Bridging the Gap levy funding ends this year, and so we'll be going out to the voters to look at if they would like to invest in further improvements in the future. And we have all of our implementation plan that's updated annually online, that everybody understands what projects we're working on, how those priority locations are selected, and that we can work together to develop a network that's connected and predictable and usable. So our second project that we're working on was, instead of flexible posts, we decided to use metal barriers. This is a zipper barrier that we salvaged from a construction project. Our bike plan called for a striped bike lane on this facility that came from the Burkman Trail to Magnuson Park. If you think about families that are riding on the Burkman Trail, riding on an on-street facility down this hill onto the park, probably not the best idea. And so we took the salvage metal barrier and installed it, and the result is that it is very much a comfortable place, and that it has opened up the facility in connection to the parks. And this is what it looks like before and after. You can see the crews there installing the green bike lane. It's really about how we prioritize and repurpose our streets. And again, it allows for a larger population of our residents to use this facility. This is Roosevelt Way on our University District, where we have an overlay project coming up later this year. And we took the opportunity, because of the concerns for dooring and also the bicycle collisions that are occurring, that we took an early implementation and put in a protected bike lane. And you can see the installation that's going on down below. And we'll have a capital project to install a permanent facility there. This is Northeast 40th Street in the U District, where there's a two-block section that's maintained by the city, where the Burkman Trail needed to be detoured. This is what it looked like before, and you can see having the trail again detour on the street, probably not the best idea. The pavement conditions are pretty bad. You can see the buses turning out from the main campus entrance on the far side of that picture. This is 15th, where the major campus is, and you can see how congested that location is with buses and pedestrians. And so this is the project area. Picture down below is what we did. We took the bike facility and just switched it and put it on one side of the street. We put some fresh pavement down, and at this intersection where the major connection to the university, again, this is tactical. All we did was we added a third phase, an all-walk phase. So it was a two-phase signal, east-west, north-south. All the turning buses were turning across all the pedestrians. Not the most efficient way or the best way to handle this intersection. Now providing this all-way walk, you can see after we turned it on, everybody understood how to use this facility. Much safer. Again, it's working much better. This is the next intersection over, where we had a signal, and we took the opportunity to put the signal on flash, back the walkheads, put in all-way stops, and now we created a intersection that's really prioritized for low speeds and pedestrians. People have ability to now cross very safely. And then this is the far end of the intersection at Brooklyn, where it's again an all-way stop that goes into the main campus of the housing. Before and after picture, you can make a huge dramatic difference. You can see some folks crossing in the middle of that intersection there. You create that buffer for people who do not have very much sidewalk space, much more comfortable not being next to a vehicle lane. And you get these type of riders, again, kids, families, and that's what we want to do, is encourage and have our facilities available to all users if they would like to try it. This is another location where we had a safety bike fall at a railroad crossing on the section of the Burkham and Missing Link Trail. And we took the opportunity to create a two-way bike facility in the interim until we figure out how to create the trail facility. So again, we took a two-way facility into a one-way facility, put the bike lane in so that it's a bike path, and we're getting families, again, traveling through that corridor safely. Our 2nd Avenue in the downtown, our mayor announced at the Bike to Work breakfast at the meeting in May that he would want to have a protected bike lane in downtown before the bike share open, which is obviously a big facility for us. So we did this project within a 4-month period. We had it in our 2-year plan. And this is what it looks like. It's a pretty daunting location with difficult turning. We had 61 collisions. 50% of those collisions occurred at this type of condition, where at the crosswalk with the left hook. And this isn't before and after. You can see a police force looking up the bike lane and thinking, wow, this is a daunting task. And afterwards, again, just repurposing that space for a better and safer organization of traffic. What we're seeing is just the repurpose of the street. We're using that curb lane for parking during the off-peak, and then stripping it off during the peak for travel lane. And I'll share with you the results. The one end of the facility, we're connecting the Pike Place Market. We took the 2 lanes and, again, changed one of the lanes into a bike facility into the market. The other goes into our Pioneer Square on Occidental Park, and we took, again, the same one of the parking lanes into a 2-way bike facility. We made some improvements at the signals, bike signals and left turn lights. Again, this is some outreach that we were doing to get the information out. And the results, we have seen a dramatic increase from 272 bicycle riders to 1,100 on the first week. In May of this year, we had 1,600 bicycle riders, almost 500% increase in bicycle ridership. So it's a very successful implementation. People are using it and has been the result on the vehicle traffic. You can see the before and after. PM peak is really the critical time for us, where everybody comes out of the parking garages. And the worst of the worst, you can see it's about 1 minute and 45 seconds between, again, just beyond the bicycle facility. We're looking at the corridor from Stewart to Jackson, and the bicycle facility is only on a portion of it. So again, it's been very successful. Our bus performance has been something that we were concerned about, and the data has shown that actually there has been no real impact to the buses. This is a facility in Dexter that we implemented this year. Linden Avenue with some concrete. This is Broadway, again, treating the bus stop. This is, again, a Broadway with some colorful rainbow crosswalk that we just installed this year. Mercer, where we have a connection from Seattle Center down to Dexter Avenue. And even existing facilities, we're seeing the change in people's comfort level. Here's on Stone Way, where we have just a painted bicycle lane. I saw this father carrying the child in this manner. And again, it's really the tools that you have. It's very easy. This is a location in Seattle Center where if you wanted to cross from one corner to the other, it was a very daunting task. We put in a crosswalk down the diagonal and added all-way walk. This is what it looks like afterwards. Just some striping and some signal phasing change. Definitely a big improvement for pedestrians, and also helps with the vehicles. And again, paint and post, very low cost, easy to implement and quick. So that's my presentation.
Thank you so much, Dong-Ho. Great job. We're going next to Kristen Saunders, and then we'll come back to Q&A in just a moment.
Hi, everyone. This is Kristen Saunders. I'm the Bicycle and Pedestrian Coordinator in City Planning in Pittsburgh. And this first map is just kind of an introduction to Pittsburgh. We're a very hilly city, as you can see on the map. A lot of topography. Oh, my slides aren't advancing. There we go. I included these pictures just to kind of show the range of cycling we have in the city. We have lots of different types of riders, trail riders, hill riders. This is from the Dirty Dozen, which is our kind of infamous yearly hill race. And so I was kind of brought into this to talk about 3 projects that happened last year in 2014. Our first, second, and third protected bike lane went in over the summer. And as you can see from this picture, they're very different conditions. One is actually in a city park, one is in our downtown core, and one is kind of this tiny little connector between 2 bike facilities. So this is a little bit about the schedule. In July, the mayor announced the project, and this was very much brought on by political support. And they were announced as 18-month pilots, 3 projects, and we had the deadline of the Pro Walk for Pro Bike conference, which is a lot of you were here for that. And we're still making adjustments, and there were adjustments that came after the initial installation. So a little bit about how our city works. We don't have a DOT. The cycling work is kind of spread across departments, and we work through something called an urban cycling committee, which is a bi-monthly meeting. The Department of City Planning, I'm there, the Department of Public Works, the engineers, and some of the people that actually build the streets, and also management on that side. The mayor's office policy manager often joins us, and then once a month we're also joined by the county and the state. And something else that's a little special here is Bike PGH, our advocacy organization, actually started these meetings and provide a lot of sort of almost staffing support. They actually take meeting notes still. And so this is definitely a work in progress, but this is currently how we're spread across departments. So the first project is on Saline Street. Here's a blow up. It's kind of a tiny little connector between two off-street facilities. And it's also this whole path is the sort of most major biking arterial in our city. It goes between Oakland and downtown, which is our first and second largest economic centers in the city. So this is an image of the bike lane. We took out a lane of parking, and this was also, besides just being our first protected bike lane, it was also a small chance to try out these products and try out something that was very new for the city and for the painting contractors to kind of see what we were talking about, which I think was important for the next two projects. So the second project I'll talk about is actually in a city park, which is a little more interesting because although the road's built, it is all our right-of-way and all city property. And this lane was actually built in front of Phipps Conservatory, which is our sort of plant house, let's say. And I know John mentioned this in his presentation, but the most comments that we've got on this lane, besides having displaced parking, is actually the aesthetics of the bike lane. And so I think as far as moving forward, I feel like this lane might be the first one that would get a more permanent treatment, whereas a lot of the other lanes, I don't think people are quite as upset about the aesthetics of the materials used. The third one is on Penn Avenue downtown. It's a major connector between a lot of really large residential area and, of course, our downtown where a lot of people work. It goes from 6th Street to 16th Street into the Strip neighborhood. And you can see it here. We actually took out a lane of traffic. So this used to be a two-way street with 2 lanes going into downtown and 1 lane going out. And they changed that outbound lane into a 2-way protected bike facility. I see this guy a lot biking to, there's a daycare on the street at 10th and Penn right in the middle of the bike lane. Here's another image. This was just last night. So the buses, so because we changed the configuration of the street, all the bus stops are actually on the right side, so we didn't have to deal with any of those. Here's from our last open streets. These are a couple pictures from just this weekend at open streets where bikes are spread out all over the street, but you can see the facility. And a lot of the largest comments is that people don't see anyone in the bike lane, and so our Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership was actually really quick to buy automatic counters, and we have 3 of them across this bike facility. It kind of shows us how people are using the facility. A lot of people are turning south to go into downtown, as you can see, but we had 24,000 trips in the month of May, and that's remained pretty consistent over the summer. I think because these were implemented so quickly, there have been quite a few changes that we've made to the bike lane after implementation. Part of it's a learning curve for us, but also just because there wasn't always time to work everything out beforehand. So one of those changes is we added a turning box. You can see that in the right-hand picture. A turning box to kind of get into the facility. And then we've also widened the buffer in one area on the left-hand photo near a handicap parking spot to provide that 5-foot turnaround. And some of the work that I think this has had the most impact on is actually our partner agencies at the state and the county. The county actually owns and maintains all of our bridges in the city. And so this is an image from the Roberto Clemente Bridge. The state decided to put a protected bike lane on this bridge, and they actually had a custom bike symbol made up, this is Roberto Clemente himself. And you can see the Pirates baseball stadium in the background. So some of the changes in process, the first one I mentioned is just because we're a small outfit and to get these projects done so quickly, last summer it was really an all hands on deck approach where everyone had to drop a lot of the things that they're responsible for and working on to kind of focus on these bike lanes for a couple months. I shouldn't say everyone, but a few people. And there's also been a focus on outreach. We've heard from the administration, and we also feel ourselves that we can't skimp on some of the outreach. And so the lanes that are going in this year have required a much more coordinated and published approach to outreach. Another thing that's changed is the funding. The 2014 lanes were funded by foundations, and in 2014, in October, we applied for a couple of grants that we thought we would be able to implement this summer, but actually just because of the long process with the state and the federal government, we're actually waiting until next summer to implement a lot of those. So there aren't any new protected bike. We're extending some of the protected bike lanes, but there aren't any new protected bike lanes going in this year, and we'll see a couple next year, and that's based just on funding. And the other thing that has really changed is that we see the need to provide a bike plan. We didn't previously have one, and if we're trying to tell people that this is important, we need to show them where we're taking them. And so we've been this is a quick glimpse at a pile of spaghetti right now, but we are working on a 6-year bike plan, and it's really exciting to be able to take it out and kind of show folks what our long-term vision will be. We've also really upped our data collection this year. We did our first citywide bike ped count. We were able to count all over the city with volunteers. This is a manual count. And another thing that's really happened since the bike lanes went in is just the interest of other agencies. The Pittsburgh Downtown Partnership started a group called Envision Downtown to kind of look at places where we could rapidly implement projects to make the pedestrians much more safe. And so the image on the left is from the Walk Institute actually held a sort of day-and-a-half-long seminar around one particular intersection that involves a transit stop and a lot of bus stops, and is a pretty dangerous large intersection. And we're actually looking at ways that we can modify that with sort of some of the cheap materials we've been talking about. And the other sort of change is that with all of our projects now, we're looking at ways to kind of change those curb radiuses and make the areas much more pedestrian friendly. So they've no longer become sort of singular bike projects. Every project kind of looks at all modes and how to make all of them safe and more clear to the user. This is just another example where we put sharrows on a street, but not only sharrows, we also put curb bump outs. And that's it. So please let me know if you have any questions. Thanks.
Kristen, excellent presentation. Thank you so much. Let's go to questions right now, and I will pop a slide up of the people that will be asking those questions of in just a moment. So let's get started. Question for you, John, and that is from Andrew. And Andrew says that he is using the term active planning when you were going through the different names that this type of rapid implementation can be called. He uses the term active planning and wants to know what you think of that.
I think it's great, and some of the institutions that we're working with are the active transportation program within the Austin Department of Transportation, for example. But we're still looking for some sense of the speed that these techniques enable in terms of distinguishing them from the sort of cynical view that people have that it takes government 20 years to rebuild a street corner.
Okay, thank you for that. Dong-Ho, a question for you from Beth. Are the bollards that you were showing us, are they in place all year long?
Yes, they are, and they're flex posts, and so they bend back and forth. We have a street sweeper that goes right down the bike lane 4 times a week, so they've been holding up pretty well.
Okay, great, and thanks to Beth for that question. And Kristen, for you, a question from Drew. What vendor did you use for your bike counters?
Those were eco counters.
Okay, all right, great. And then let's take another question. This is a general question from Steve. When is a protected bike lane needed as opposed to a conventional bike lane? And Steve wants to know, is there a volume or speed threshold that is used as a rule of thumb? Who would like to take that?
I don't have, we don't have a formula that I'm aware of, but you know, the NACDO Urban Bikeway Design Guide does give you some sort of a qualitative guidance about the choice of the intensity of bike lanes. And I will say, in my own experience, the parking protected lanes are the standard for bike lanes on busy streets in Manhattan. And they're starting to be implemented in other parts of the city as well, primarily on arterial roadways.
And you can certainly see the number of families and children cycling really seems to go up. A question for both either Kristen or Dong Ho from Diane. Was there community pushback when removing parking in your projects? And if there was, how did you work through the issues?
So this is Dong Ho, and parking is always a concern, especially when you're talking about people's access. And so it's really about getting out to the individual businesses and homeowners and finding out what their needs are. Do they have any alternatives? And if there isn't, is there a way to flexibly accommodate their needs on the project itself? And so on 2nd Avenue, what we did was use that curb lane as a parking lane for majority of the day, and then during the time when we need it for the peak, it is a drive lane. So again, you can see if we can come up with a win-win. There's sometimes ability to provide parking on a side street, increase parking depending on roadway configuration. So it's really about talking to the community and developing a good solution that will work for them long term.
This is Kristen. I'd say, you know, very similar things. We definitely had some pushback on parking. I think we are trying to address that with data, just sort of collecting data on how often the spaces are actually used, collecting data on how many people are actually biking, and sort of having to make that decision from a policy level on the best use of that street space. So parking is always a concern. Also collecting data on how many available parking spots there are within, you know, a certain distance has been helpful as well. So you're not just looking at that one street, but the whole sort of neighborhood of parking.
Okay, great, thank you. And this is a question from Lucas. What sort of considerations have any of you had to deal with regarding bollards or separators and snow removal equipment?
This is Dong Ho, and we haven't had a snow event. So what will happen is, obviously, these bollards can be twisted off. And they're also a marker, so you know, when we do have the snow event, we're going to try to maintain the clearance. But we don't get too much snow in Seattle, so we're lucky in that.
This is John. We worked with the sanitation department when the first protected bike lanes began to go in, and they're not all marked by the plastic posts, but some of them are narrower than one of the large scale snow plows that the city uses. So we helped them procure some equipment that is essentially like a pickup truck with a plow, and those plow the bike lane. And yes, there are plastic posts that get destroyed in the winter, but the idea is that those are gonna have some kind of replacement cycle. They're not intended to last forever.
Okay. Well, I am very sorry, but we are out of time today, and we did receive a lot of excellent advanced questions, and our presenters did work quite hard to include those in their presentation. So because we're doing a practice session now for the one of the professional development sessions, seminar sessions, we're going to go ahead and close the webinar today. And thank you so much for taking time to attend. Thank you to People4Bikes for sponsoring the webinar today. Thank you to our excellent presenters, John Orcutt, Dong Ho Chang, and Kristen Saunders. And thank you also to APBP's staff member, Deborah Gakes, for the fine work she does in pulling these webinars together. And with that, I'll wish everyone a good day and spread the word. The webinar recording will be posted later to the YouTube channel. Take care, everyone. Do good work.